Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. To purchase and book sessions with AJ Mahari, visit ajmahari.ca. This is the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. And now your host, AJ Mahari.
Five reasons why borderlines are so inwardly focused. Borderline personality disorder, BPD, is complex, characterized by emotional dysregulation, unstable relationships, impulsivity, and a distorted sense of self, because really, they don't know who they are. People with BPD often exhibit patterns of intense and unstable emotions, self-image, and unstable, impulsive, emotionally childlike behavior due to the emotional arrested development that they suffered by or before the age of 2. Many with BPD can often display inwardly focused tendencies, and this means they are often not listening to you or hearing what you're saying, not really considering it, not finding it important, because they're kind of too busy inside with all the emotions and distress that they're often drowning in and unconsciously unaware of what is happening, what is the cause for how they're feeling. This makes them draw in quite a bit and really not hear you due to this much more predominant inner focus in people with BPD that I don't think is often realized by many other people. People with BPD rarely hear everything you say, but what they will hear and then misinterpret is just what affects them, or what they feel isn't fair, or isn't right, or somehow you are being mean to them. Because if you're not really over-focused on them, if you're not really just trying to validate them, then they just feel everything is kind of negative and the opposite, and they don't trust your love, and you really couldn't love them if you just did this or just did that, or if you didn't extra consider them. And even when you extra consider them or validate them or try to give them more attention, and their attention needs are insatiable, so you're not really going to get where you're trying to go. People with BPD continue to be coming from a place of inward focus. And there are several reasons why individuals with BPD may well be inwardly focused more often than not. And here's 5 core reasons why people with BPD are predominantly inner focused. Number 1, emotional instability. People with BPD often struggle with regulating their emotions effectively. They may experience intense and rapidly shifting emotions such as anger, sadness, or anxiety, feelings of invalidation. These emotional fluctuations can consume a significant amount of their attention and energy, making it challenging for them to focus on anyone or anything externally. Number 2, the second reason why people with BPD could be so inner focused is fear of abandonment. A common characteristic of BPD, a central core one that everybody with the patterns of or diagnosis of BPD will have a tremendous fear of abandonment. This fear can lead individuals to be hypervigilant and preoccupied with maintaining relationships, but in a way that is that push-pull. In a way that the more they're preoccupied with maintaining a relationship, the more inner focus they actually get. And that's probably largely unconscious because it's very self-sabotaging. They may constantly worry about being rejected or abandoned by others, which can contribute to their inward focus as they attempt to manage and control these fears. And as I said, as they try to manage and control their abandonment fears, they are pushing others away, and it's a rather self-sabotaging inward focus that leads relationships and conversations in relationships, communication in relationships, to feel and or seem and or be next to impossible. And the third reason why people with BPD are usually and often very inwardly focused, identity disturbance. Individuals with BPD frequently struggle with a fragmented or unstable sense of self. They may have difficulty establishing a consistent and coherent identity. Actually, people with BPD, patterns of, or diagnosed and untreated, will not have any way of really establishing a consistent and coherent identity. That requires significant long-term therapy. When they have difficulty with and or do not establish this consistent and coherent identity, which they all lack with BPD unless really significantly treated, this leads to feelings of emptiness and confusion. Consequently, people with BPD may spend significant amounts of time and energy trying to understand who they are and seeking validation from others. And the more they're seeking validation from you or others in general, the more that is a sign of just how inwardly focused they really are. Because often they might want to vent to you, they might want to tell you about somebody at work or a family member or you or what they're feeling and why it's all unfair, and they can get quite worked up and be really emotionally unstable about it. And the more that they spend a significant amount of time and energy trying to understand this or seeking validation, getting you to kind of agree with whatever they're trying to describe they're feeling, the more inward focused they really are. Even if they talk to you for 12 hours, their focus is inward. And what's in that for you? And then there's the jade conversations where you'll end up justifying, arguing, defending, and explaining. And they're not listening, and they're not hearing you, and they're misperceiving what you say because they're inwardly focused in the first place. And the fourth reason, again, for this inwardly focused presentation of BPD, which can happen in all different subtypes of BPD, and generally speaking happens more often than not for anyone with BPD untreated. And that is intense self-criticism. And this is something that goes on internally for a lot of people with BPD that you may not realize as somebody who's close to or trying to love somebody with BPD. Many people with BPD experience a strong inner critic that constantly judges and criticizes their thoughts, feelings, and actions. And they feel very often, if not almost always, depending on the severity of their BPD, they just feel really less than, no matter how they try to overcompensate for that or present that differently. People with BPD don't know themselves, right? There's that unstable sense of identity and lack of self, really. There's a real negative self-hatred in the lack of self. And this really catches the focus in an unconscious way, where people with BPD are going to be tremendously inner focused on what they're feeling and going through because they don't understand why, what it connects to. And this is also why they will often project it out onto you and tell you that you're doing things that you're not even doing, but it's what they're feeling inside, and they can't hold it inside, so they're going to throw it out and accuse you of doing something that's making them feel how they're actually just feeling, for whatever the various reasons could be that they're feeling really bad inside. And people with BPD are operating out of an enormity of a major shame wound. So this self-critical voice inside people with BPD can be very overpowering and demanding, and makes it extremely difficult for individuals with BPD to focus on external experiences or engage with the world around them, or hear you and engage in a conversation in any mutual reciprocal way with you. And the fifth reason for this inner focus in people with BPD, well, it's a combination of defense mechanisms that are maladaptive coping mechanisms. Individuals with BPD may develop various coping mechanisms to manage their emotional pain and distress. These defensive coping strategies are maladaptive and, for example, include being very disagreeable, argumentative, raging, or withdrawing, giving you the silent treatment. They might self-isolate, often self-harm, and or dissociate to varying degrees, or they just check out and push you away. And this leads people with BPD to really not be emotionally available. They don't know how to be emotionally available really more often than not. But they don't know, they're not present. They're not in the here and now present moment in their relating to you, or lack thereof. In conversations, in relationships, or social interactions, and they have a heightened focus on their own internal experiences because the feelings are so loud inside of them. The feelings are subsuming their time, attention, and energy, and they don't know why, and they don't understand that these feelings are actually deeply internal, because they tend to externalize them and not understand them and not know how to cope with their own feelings. So often people with BPD will, in their internal focus, believe that what they're feeling that they can't tolerate really is something that you did, when it really isn't. So it's important to note that individuals with BPD who display these more inwardly focused tendencies, and all will, but to varying degrees, cannot simultaneously have the capacity for empathy and concern for others, for you as if you're the partner, or if you're an ex, and you're so trying to get back with this person with BPD who's so inwardly focused and really not going to hear you, and really going to misperceive most of what you say, if in fact they're even listening or paying attention. The self-focus of people with BPD leaves you out. It blocks any chance at mutuality or reciprocity, and people with BPD, not knowing themselves, being this inwardly focused, they are not capable of mutuality or reciprocity. It means you are not being seen or heard or valued, probably more of the time than not, and especially after the honeymoon phase ends and the devaluation has kicked in. Micro devaluation, major devaluation, it doesn't lead to a ghosting or discard at a certain point in time. People with BPD can have patterns of ghosting or discarding that for a time anyways can be pretty predictable, but still this is another facet of what's happening for them in terms of how internally focused they really are. So their locus of focus is unconsciously internal, but gets projected out and externalized almost constantly by most people with BPD. The difference there would be people with quiet BPD are likely not really externalizing much of all of what's going on inside, what they're trying to cope with, how inwardly focused they actually are. The inward focused tendencies to varying degrees make it difficult to often impossible for people with BPD to consistently prioritize at all, never mind consistently, listening to you and actually hearing you or expressing anything about your feelings or what you're actually trying to communicate. Are you, or have you, or did you experience a person with BPD and maybe what you didn't realize was their inward focus blocking you out? Did you experience being either ignored or constantly fought with in most attempts to communicate with the person with BPD who was or may still be in your life? Are you experiencing, or did you experience your partner or ex as either being non-responsive with their preoccupied inner focus, or often being extremely argumentative, devaluing, really essentially disinterested, and like trying to communicate your feelings or your thoughts to them, or maybe even just general things, was like trying to break through a brick wall to even really feel like they were listening or involved in relating to you in any way whatsoever? Because people with BPD do have this inward focus, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much that affects a lot that goes wrong in these relationships, and why people with BPD cannot connect with you, and you're trying so hard to be connected to them, but their inward focus and all the reasons for it, I just gave you 5 central core reasons for it, are the reasons why this inward focus is at the heart. One major core, huge obstacle of why you really never can connect to the person with BPD, and they do not feel connected to you in a way that they can trust. But they don't trust others because of that lack of self. And it's all to do with the lack of self that leads and continues to be the single causative factor of why borderlines are so inwardly focused. They're really not able to be mutual or reciprocal or hear you or really see you, because they're always in one manner or another, and often unconsciously, so busy inside with what is deep, profound, and often endless distress that they do not understand, have any conscious awareness of what is generating that, where it's coming from, so they'll blame you, and that they really just don't have any effective ways of coping with. Many people with BPD are going to be way more inwardly focused than most people realize, and it does leave you out.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. Our passion is to bring expert information for people that are hurt by someone with BPD. We truly hope you've gotten something from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.